The James Show Podcast.
Dealing with the Idaho murderer who just got sentenced. He had killed the 4 people 3 years ago, and now he's getting 4 life sentences with a couple other sentences tacked on top of that. So he's going to be locked away for good. We don't have to worry about this guy ever again. Now, that doesn't mean there's not more psychos out there and we're completely in the clear and we can completely let our guard down. But at least for this one guy, his time is done.
I will not attempt to speak about him further, other than to simply sentence him so that he is forever removed from civilized society.
And in the discussion on how can we disincentivize future Idaho killers like this, and I'm intentionally not saying his last name, that's also part of the disincentive theory. I think public executions got to come back. Not just executions, public executions. And look, previous callers said, let's put them on pay-per-view. It sounds like a joke. I don't think that's a joke. It's better than paying taxes for these guys. Heck, make that execution pay for itself. 800-288-9227. This is Tom in Oklahoma. You're on WBAP.
Hey, James. I agree with whoever it was that was talking about pay-per-view. I was thinking about pay down the debt, but if it'll just pay for the execution, that'll be fine. But pay-per-view, that's a good idea. I have a particular, in view of your previous guest comments, I'm not sure that the Eighth Amendment will allow it. I don't know how that would work out. I didn't know about that. But I have a particular person in mind whom I won't name in respect for your principles on the air. But he was a major promulgator of the COVID pandemic, and he's been pardoned by the auto pen.
Yeah, it could be anybody. Yeah.
Yeah, but it gets complicated from there.
Yeah. So Tom, you're on board with that. What about your concerns that children might see it?
That's my major concern, which is why I brought up the pandemic, because this guy disrupted the lives of students all across the United States, and you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah. Well, also the idea that they stopped us from going to church. And did you get due process? Yes. I didn't get a hearing either. Now all these people that are concerned about due process when it comes to an MS-13 gang member who's not even an American, where were they 5 years ago? It's the damnedest thing, Tom.
Well, and my church, we did what was according to the Bible. We were 6 feet apart and wore masks and all that nonsense.
Yeah, I think it says that in Leviticus or something, doesn't it? It's just anyway. Go ahead.
I think it was Romans. I think they said obey the government. And anyway, so God placed these people in power, but this guy, and you know exactly who I'm talking about, was the highest paid federal employee in the government.
All right, Tom in Oklahoma wants Fauci to die. We'll just leave it there. Is that what you were getting at, Tom?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
All right, thank you. Great call, sir. He's a funny guy. This is Michael in Fort Worth. You're next up on WBAP. Go.
I'm also a big fan of the pay-per-view kind of deal, but I got a little bit of a slant on it. I figure you come up with 5 random methods of execution and allow the people which have subscribed to view that execution to vote on which method is to be used.
Oh, like American Idol, you can text your vote in? That's
exactly
great. The only argument that, and I've been having this debate on talk radio ever since I've been on it. The only argument that really kind of bothers me against this and makes me reconsider my position is someone called in one time and they're like, isn't this what they did in Idiocracy? And then I had to make the point that just because they did it on Idiocracy doesn't mean it's wrong. When they had the rehabilitation after Not Sure got in trouble and they were going to execute him, it was in a big arena and there was a whole crowd there with the band and it was a whole scene and it was on TV and Fox News was running commercials for it. And he was in a big, what was that, Volkswagen Bug with the phallus? We'll just leave it at that on it.
Right.
So the Idiocracy angle is the only time when I'll go, maybe I should reconsider my position. But that's the only thing they got on it so far. I think we all agree here, Michael. I'm glad you're on board. Thank you, sir.
Back to you.
All right. Thanks for calling in. I thought of my next guest, David Hamilton, when I saw the news about it keeps coming out from Tulsi Gabbard and that whole crew. More and more stuff about the Trump-Russia collusion. And that story, not only did it fall apart, David Hamilton, it's starting to look like the only people not involved in the Trump-Russia collusion hoax are Trump and Russia at this point. How funny is that?
Yeah, what's really interesting and newsworthy about this is previously there had been no connection, and no one been able to make a connection with the Obama administration. It was widely reported and understood that the Democratic Party, the DNC, and Hillary Clinton's campaign had paid for the Russian quote-unquote dossier, which makes things sound really fancy if you put a fancy name on them, right? They paid dossier, for that. And,
yes.
And dossier sounds way better than report or whatever.
File.
Very, very few people actually read that report. Most people don't know what's in it. They don't know some of the salacious things that were said that had to do with prostitutes and things like that, nor do they know where those, the sources of those, which were largely Russians that supposedly said these things, and Ukrainians. So a lot of people don't know much about it. And the truth is, there really are two camps. There's one group that believes wholeheartedly today that the Russian collusion thing was true, that Trump was an illegitimate president, that he stole the election. Many people on his political enemies said that. And there didn't seem to be any sort of criticism of them for saying that. And many people still today, if you go, it all depends on where you get your information. If you go to certain sources of information, you believe that it was used nefariously to get the FISA warrants, that the Trump campaign was surveilled unfairly. People's lives were ruined. In particular, the Russian expert that was an advisor was only tangentially related to the Trump campaign early on in the election. So it depends on where you go. If you go today to Yahoo's website, you really don't see much about this other than you see a rebuttal by President Obama saying that it's ridiculous or it's absurd. If you go to other websites, you go to Fox, you hear, you see it's very prominent. You see a lot of information on it. We live in two realities. We don't have a cultural war anymore, in my opinion. We live in a reality war. Depending on where you get your information is what you fundamentally believe. And the idea that this would somehow be tied to Obama is the only newsworthy thing. And that is yet to come out. It says that on the report, if you actually read the actual report on the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, you can go read it. I recommend people be a little bit more critical, a little bit more less trusting, a little bit more discerning, and dig into these things, because there are too many people in our country that want to believe certain things, and they have confirmation bias, and they believe whatever their side says.
Well, this may be a shocking opinion to some listeners to WBAP, but I really don't think Obama is going to get rolled up into this. A couple reasons. He's at the end of his second term. He's not trying to get reelected. Why would he risk getting in trouble? Why would he even care? I don't even think he's that big of a fan of Hillary. Now, Hillary's fingerprints are all over this. It was her friends that paid for the Fusion GPS that paid for the dossier, and she has the motive. She has the incentive. And I distrust her far more than, Obama, who has nothing to gain while committing these felonies.
From the outside looking in, it doesn't look like Obama was zealous enough to want to do anything like this to support her. She clearly had ambitions, desperately wanted to become president. And it bothers me, I guess, a little bit to this day that there are a lot of people in our country who don't believe that the Democratic Party paid for it, the Fusion GPS tie to this, what it was used for, et cetera. So, again, we live in two realities, depending on where you get your news and what you
David,
believe. That's what you believe.
Sorry to interrupt, but this explanation comes up all the time. If you believe this guy's Hitler, you don't care if Fusion GPS paid for the dirty info. You're trying to keep Hitler from coming out of power, and whatever means necessary is justified by the ends. But you have to, that presupposes you believe Trump's Hitler.
And if you do, I would take it further. I honestly believe that Trump was Hitler in the flesh. I would have a moral obligation to do something about that. I don't think I could get through my day if I thought we were actually being run by Hitler. So that kind of hyperbole, that kind of rhetoric is dangerous. It has caused a lot of the attacks that we've seen on him and others. If you go around vilifying people and say they are actually Hitler, I think most of us would have to say we have a moral responsibility to do something about that. I think a lot of people say that for political gain. They don't truly believe it. And if they do truly believe it, they have no moral courage themselves.
Well, I think we have a question that'll be perfect for our conversation here. This is Brent in Lake Weatherford. You're on WBAP with David Hamilton from the National Security Economic Center at UNT. Go ahead. What do you think, Brent?
Well, James, I think you're naive on this deal. A little disappointed in you because Obama, you know how that guy is. He's egotistical. He wants to run the show, and that's what he did during Biden. And his fingerprints are everywhere. He just tries to stay away from it because he's smart.
Okay, now from my point of view, I think you give him too much credit. I think he's more like an AOC who answered an audition for the Puppet Masters, the machine, the money behind the seat. That, you know, who's going to be our puppet for this. And so Barack Obama is no great ambition or big thinker. He was a guy who was plucked out of obscurity from Chicago to play a role. He played the role. I don't think he's the brains behind all this. And I think you give him too much credit.
James, look what he did to get elected in the first place. He slandered people. He did exactly what he did with Trump. When you look at when he ran in Chicago, when he was whatever he was, then he was in the legislature or whatever. He did exactly the same thing. That's his MO.
Okay, Brent, maybe so. Let's see what David Hamilton thinks. Go, David.
So, James, you know I don't align with a political party. I haven't voted in a primary in 15 years. I am a hardcore, radical, moderate, and independent. That said, I would simply say this. From my perspective, actually proving and tying that Obama had his fingerprints on this, that he directed in some way, is going to be very difficult because of what the caller says. He is smart. I think he did figure out if he did do this, he's smart enough to not be tied to it. That's not what really matters to me or not at this point. Winners rewrite history. They write history, and we've been seeing that happen. Whoever's in charge gets to write the narrative. At the end of the day, I think your listeners are more discerning than the average listener, so I applaud you and your listeners for that. And they're skeptical. And I think we have to be skeptical on when our people are telling us something we want to believe. We have to be skeptical, certainly when the other side is saying what they're saying. At the end of the day, it is inarguable that this Russian collusion thing was largely fabricated. There's no proof. I wouldn't even say largely. There is no credible proof. And the various commissions that were paid millions of dollars to try to find a tie couldn't do it. It's hard to prove a negative, right? But no one was able to prove a positive that there were any form of collusion or bad acts by the Trump campaign. And I would really like it if our nation could somehow figure out a way to share information and to not be so partisanly divided.
In this whole Russia collusion hoax thing, does Russia see this and enjoy it? Because they're getting a whole lot of credit for being able to control who's chosen as the most powerful person on planet Earth, you know, the president of the most powerful country on Earth. What do you think they think of this?
Oh, I absolutely think that they chuckle with glee every time we stub our toe and do stupid things to ourselves and fight amongst ourselves. The Chinese do that. All of our enemies do that. And that's why this is so unwise. You know, the Russians are actually very, very good at this. You may recall in the 1980s, they convinced the world that the United States actually created AIDS because the United States hated black people in Africa. They succeeded that. That was called Operation Denver, also called Infection. They're very, very proud of that. They used a series of lies and referenced those lies in newspaper articles in small countries. They're masters at this sort of thing. So they're probably capable of doing this sort of thing. It's just in this case, you know, they got credit without having to do any heavy lifting.
I find that in some ways amusing, kind of a sad amusing, but
ironically,
amusing.
Sadly amusing,
right? Because and that's one of the reasons why so many people didn't believe it at all. Really, Russia's hacking into our election, and that was the specific verbiage a lot of people were using. Russia's hacked into our election, and
there was never any definition of that. They said they bought Facebook ads. The Facebook ads I purchased over time for various businesses I own have never worked that well. So I need to get better at Facebook ads. I don't understand how Facebook ads could possibly turn an election, but that was the claim.
Well, I also enjoy the fact that that's what you consider to be hacking. like openly buying face. That's not hacking. Hacking sounds sinister. Sounds like
we have
we're
a number
being
of
cheated.
philanthropists in this country that buy all sorts of social media and et cetera, and try to affect elections. They give to different parties, et cetera. So that would put them in a situation similar to any of the activists, the celebrities that try to promote a particular outcome. So there's that. And
I was going to say, we had the big press conference today. Tulsi Gabbard came out, and this is pretty much the third day in a row that she's released something publicly or started dripping out information slowly. So they want to keep this storyline going. This isn't like we're just dumping all this for transparency's sake. This seems to be some sort of ongoing narrative that's not going away anytime soon. But David, I'm kind of losing interest in talking about it. Is someone going to go to jail?
So I'm doubtful. I'm a little skeptical. The only person so far was Kevin Kleinsmith he's part of Operation Crossfire Hurricane. He deliberately altered an email and admitted to that. And he said he changed it so that Carter Page was considered a source versus not a source. The intelligence community did not believe that Carter Page was at all a source on Russian collusion or any other nefarious activities. And he changed that. He admitted to it. He got 12 months probation. Now, those are the kinds of folks that usually get something. If you and I lied on our taxes, we're probably going to go to jail for longer than that, right? So this is somebody tried to was part of an effort to impact an election, change an election, influence it, et cetera, from our intelligence community. And he was convicted of that. So those are the kinds of people that typically get in trouble for these things. People at higher levels, as your caller said earlier, are able to protect themselves. Now, like you said, they're able to protect themselves, plausible deniability, et cetera. They shield themselves. I would really love to see anyone who perpetrates any hoax, regardless of or anybody who's guilty of anything. Let's take the Epstein files, all these things. The MLK, JFK. I think the American people are smart enough and strong enough to handle the truth, as crazy or as bad as it may be. And for us to live up to our ideals, we have to release any and all information about all these things. And people have to be counted on to being smart enough to parse it themselves and understand it. And with the understanding that some things may be a lie, some things may be the truth, but we have to be strong enough as a nation to open up our kimono to ourselves and trust our voters to be smart enough to deal with these issues.
Did you say open our kimono to ourselves?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I wear a kimono around the house. As soon as I get off work, I go home, put on a kimono, and that's it. Just one well-placed sock. We're talking with David Hamilton from the National Security Economics Center at UNT. David, there's such a scarce historical precedent for things like this. Like, you'll see a Scooter Libby go to jail. You'll see a Paul Manafort go to jail, but never do you see any of these bigwigs go to jail. So I think we're all going to be skeptical until we actually see a little more action on this. But
typically it's a process crime. Someone is investigating something. They find something out about somebody else, like the dealings of one of Trump's lawyers. He went to jail for his dealings unrelated to the investigation that was being conducted. He himself had done some bad things. That somehow gets tied to the person that you're investigating. It's a pretty common tactic. This is something that we all have to be smart enough to do. And we as consumers of information have to be a little skeptical, read multiple sources, and use some critical thinking skills that I'm afraid our nation isn't really teaching in our schools very much.
You get the class summit coming up September 13th. Who needs to go to that?
So we have a cyber, land, air, sea, and space summit, joint domain focus in it. Things like AI, advanced technologies. We're celebrating the 250th anniversary of the Army and the Navy's forming this year. We have a dinner. We have a awards dinner. General Petraeus is helping us honor Admiral McCraven and some others that evening. It's a little hard to get to our website just yet. We're building that out. But we would love people to buy a table, buy a ticket, be a sponsor, this sort of thing. And that will be up. I'll have an email, a web address for you to use next time we chat.
All right. Thank you very much, David Hamilton. Appreciate you being on the James Show and sharing your expertise with WBAP listeners. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
What about the price of gas? Hadn't heard a lot about that. Sometimes if you don't hear something about a certain subject in the news for a long time, it's because it's doing so dang good. RT Trevino has the answers. He's from Pecos Country Energy, also hosts the Crude Truth podcast, a regular on the James Show. So where do you think the price of gas is going? First off, welcome back. But where do you think the price is going from here, RT? Does it still have room to go down?
There is definitely still room for it to go down, James. We've seen the summer peak season has already hit. So now we got people getting ready to go back to school. And so travel's going to shorten now. Of course, we still have Labor Day weekend travel. However, I filled up my diesel for $3.14 just this week. And there's still room for gas prices around the country to continue to drop.
Well, I had a listener just email me yesterday asking about the price of gas. They were expecting it to go down, starting about $3, and it's only down to about $2.89, maybe $2.79 at a good pump. So I think a lot of people were expecting a bigger drop.
I think we could definitely see that. You got to keep in mind, obviously, there is, due to the market and the tension with Iran is still there. And of course, the war in Ukraine is still there. However, the demand really has already been peaked. So our supply is very good right now. And in fact, Secretary of Energy Chris Wright reported just the other day that we are at 4-year lows in oil and gasoline prices. And then if you added in inflation, we are actually at 20-year lows in the gasoline prices across America.
Yeah, I guess that's a big factor, too. Inflation is sort of cooled. I think it's still too hot. It's above 2%, and that's going to be a little bit painful. But it does kind of mask the idea that the price of gasoline has been, on a historical basis, lower than average.
Yes, based off of historically, yes, we have definitely seen these lower gasoline prices, James, and they're only going to continue, to go down, just based on what I'm hearing. And two reasons why they're going down. The first one, and I've said it here before, it's a shout out to all those men and women out there that are working in the oil and gas industry, from the wireline guys at Recon to the drillers at Sperl. They're all out there just helping us all continue to have these lower gas prices. But also, it's President Trump's drill, baby, drill mantra. He wants us to truly become energy dominant and really energy independent. Now, we got a long way to go to actually have realistic energy independence. However, with Lee Zeldin in the EPA and Chris Wright and Doug Burgum, we could definitely possibly see some new refineries in the near future, possibly just because we got pro businessmen that understand that. And also with the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, you can blatantly see President Trump's drill baby drill mantra in there with his really promotion of trying to get everyday Americans to invest in American oil and get great tax deductions by just investing in oil and gas across this beautiful nation.
We're talking with RT Trevino from the Crude Truth podcast and Pegasus Country Energy. Now, you say the peak of the summer driving season is over. Was demand above or below estimates? Was it busier than expected or lighter than expected, RT?
It was a record-breaking year as far as travel goes. However, it was actually a little bit lighter than they expected. So take that for what it's worth. We had record-breaking travel, but it wasn't quite what we all thought it was going to be.
They were expecting bigger records?
I guess so, yeah.
All right, RT, what's coming up on the Crude Truth podcast?
Oh, my gosh. What a time. I just got done having a excellent C-suite HR executive on the show, and I couldn't have timed that one more better, if that's a word, with the Coldplay incident that happened last week. And she really just breaks down how CEOs, how it's really a top to bottom, and that they got to lead and they got to get out of their own way sometimes to continue to lead. And then also I had on Congresswoman Beth Van Dyne a couple of weeks ago. So we're just gearing up for another great season of podcasting. And I want you to come on at some point. So I got to talk to your boy.
All right, it'll happen. But we talked about the Coldplay concert, and our conclusion there, RT, is, just for the wife of the guy, how embarrassing is it for her to find out that way that your husband likes Coldplay? This is so humiliating. All right.
Oh, yeah.
RT, did you get to see Landman yet?
Oh yeah, man! They're shooting. They were shooting over here in Fort Worth just the other day.
Yeah, there was a shoot not too far from here too. I'm all caught up on season 1. I'm looking forward to season 2 because it sure does make you guys in the oil patch look cool.
It does, and I like the twist. You know, you got Billy Bob Thornton, but then it ends with his son getting ready to buy his first deal or bought his first deal. So, it'll be exciting to see how it goes this season.
Yeah, that's cool. Do you see yourself in your show? Which character are you, RT?
I probably depends on the day and also who you ask on what character I am in the show.
I'm asking RT Trevino. Thank you very much. Check him out on the Crew Truth podcast and Pecos Country Energy. Appreciate it, sir.
Thank you, James. Talk to you soon.
So Collective Soul and Live are bringing their summer Unity tour to the Pavilion at Toyota Music Factory August 13th with special guest Our Lady Peace. If you want to try and win some tickets off of us, I would love for you to win some tickets off of us. You got to text the word summer to 800-288-9227. It's the same number I give out if you want to call into the show. Text the word summer for tickets to see Collective Soul Live and Our Lady Peace August 13th. Text summer to 800-288-9227. Coming up next on The James Show, Texas Senate is thinking about banning THC again, and one guy in the Senate is calling it the new meth. You'll hear it next on News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM, WBAP.
The James Show Podcast.